Yo, what's going on?
Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back into More Nights Gaming. My name is Raven. If you are new here, yo, slap that sub button, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video to make sure you get all the content I put out. We're going to be covering lots of Godfall in the next few days as it releases in 2 days, and I am super excited for this game. I probably shouldn't be, but I am. So I also stream live on twitch.tv, so if you are inclined to come over and watch, I stream on Sunday, Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. You can find the description down below. So make sure you follow me on there. We're going to be covering lots of Godfall and going through all its crazy systems there as well. But let's jump into this and talk about what we know about Godfall. First of all, I have to say, it's not a gacha game. You don't need to be rolling your credit card out for skins and classes. Sorry, Genshin Impact. You were cool, and then stuff happened. And you're also getting the full game on release. No nonsense like, oh, you're gonna get this game today and then the DLC will be released with the rest of the game 3 months later. No, you're getting the full game on release. No crazy ass waiting for DLCs to give you the full game. The full game's dropping on November 12th, which is awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I know there hasn't been a lot of information on this game, and I really had to go digging to find this information. I had to go like everywhere. I was on different YouTube videos and then different IGN interviews and Reddit forums. It was just absolutely crazy trying to find all this information. It's been very like put all over the place. I don't know why, but even the website doesn't give you any much to look at. Like it gives you like art and a video and basic information. It's like they don't want you to know what their game's about. So I don't know, it's very weird. But otherwise, the game looks amazing. So the game releases in 2 days. It drops November 12th. It's going to be on PC through the Epic Game Store. It's an Epic Game Store exclusive. It's also going to be on the PS5. There's no crossplay late. It's a possibility of having it on Xbox later. I'm not sure about Steam, but hopefully it hits all those platforms, those 2 other platforms, and we can have crossplay between both of them because that would be dope. The visuals in this game are absolutely beautiful. They're stunning. I like it. I like the oversaturation. It looks very pretty. I like this high fantasy look. It's very cool. It's being published by Gearbox, the people who did Borderlands series. It's also being developed by Counterplay Games. This is actually a mixture of people from different teams that created God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Destiny 2, Ratchet & Clank. So we got some like class people here, guys, that have made some of the best games in the industry. So let's jump into this. Let's start talking about the main campaign. So the main campaign consists of going around to 4 different elemental realms. Those elemental realms are, of course, going to be Earth, Water, Air, and Fire. Maybe Heart. I'm just kidding. It's a Captain Planet reference. So we're going to go through all these, follow the story, do some nonsense, beat up some bad guys, kill some bosses, and once you finish the story, you'll get to the endgame mode. The endgame mode actually looks pretty dope. The endgame mode is the Tower of Trials. It's like an endless dungeon. If you played Final Fantasy 14, that's an endless dungeon where you just keep going at the Palace of the Dead. You just keep going up all these different floors until you get to like the 100th floor and possibly even more than that. And then same thing with Heaven on High in Final Fantasy 14. If you played the Division 2, they released a game mode called Summit. Which is like a endless dungeon. You climb up the floor to 100 floors. You just keep repeating it over and over again, fighting different and harder enemies. The enemies are always regenerated differently. So it's very, very, very cool. And I love endless dungeons. I think endless dungeons are very cool. And in Tower of Trials, every time you beat a certain area, you get keys. Once you get those keys, you can open up certain doors or chests to get specific type of loot. Like one key will open, certain keys will give you amulets, or other ones will give you swords, or whatever you're specifically looking for. And after you get that loot, you can continue to jump on the elevator and go up and fight some higher enemies, or you can choose to leave and be done with it. But you can always come back to it and do the same thing. So it's very much endless dungeon. It's going to be a grind. It's going to be, an endless grind, pretty much is what this is. So it's very, very cool. The cool thing about this is that the main story and the end game mode, the Tower of Trials, is complete co-op. So you have the 3 people in co-op, yourself and 2 other players, which is very cool. So if you got friends, just drop in, drop out. So you can just drop into the game and leave the game, which is very cool. I like that a lot. So it's very neat. The cool thing about it is that you can actually combine Valor Plates. We'll talk about Valor Plates in a later section. You can actually combine them and synergize. You can have certain builds that will play off each other and do certain types of key damage or different key type of damage and buffs and debuffs or healing, whatever it might be. And the cool thing is that you don't have the unique plates in your system. You can have unique plates in your party, excuse me. So you can have someone who's the Silvermane, or someone who is, you can have 2 tanks or 2 healers, or three healers or 3 tanks, however you actually want to play, whatever you feel like is going to be best for you. There's really nothing that says you have to play this way, which is very cool. Another cool thing is that enemies will scale based on the players in the group. So if you got 2 other people with you, this can be extremely difficult, especially if you're playing at a hardest difficulty. There will be difficulty options that will probably range from like normal to legendary. I don't really know the options, but that's what I'm speculating right now. There's going to be some high difficulty options that you can choose from. And of course, the more players you have, the harder it was, the harder it's going to be to actually scale with your other players. What I've also noticed about this game is even in the main campaign, as you're going through the 4 main realms, it didn't really break off from like just following the railroad tracks. It's very linear from what I can tell. I don't see anything that's open world. It is a hub-based game, so you're going to come back to the hub and configure your plates and configure your weapons and configure your augments, with all the stuff we'll start talking into. But it seems very linear, which I'm not against linear games as long as they're bringing you content and enjoyability and replayability. I really don't have a problem with linear games. I do like open world, but sometimes open world is just like, there's so much to do, I don't know where to go, and then you're lost and traveling down the freaking beach and looking at stones and kicking crabs, and it's like, whoa, what do I do now? And you just get lost because ADHD. It just happens. I can't help myself. ADHD. Anyway, that's why I get so hyper sometimes. So anyway, also I haven't really seen much about boss battles, but from what I have derived from the stuff that I'm reading is that there's mid-level bosses and like big boy level bosses. So it looks pretty cool. The boss, I would love to see the boss fights. I'm assuming the mid-level bosses would be like, they're gonna drop gear for you, but then the big ass bosses are gonna be really dope. They're gonna be cool key mechanics. You gotta dodge, block, kick, punch, dodge some more. So it looks pretty cool. I'm hoping that the boss battles are really neat. I really haven't seen much. I've been looking for them. I haven't seen much of anything. Like, I feel like a lot of information has been kind of kept tight close to the chest, which is cool in its own way because it's really not like hyping you up as much for it, and it's leaving things as a surprise. Kind of like unlike they did with certain other games where it's like they hyped everything and it just fell flat. So you're not going with such high expectations. Your kind of expectation is set like, okay, I really know much about this game. It looks cool. Let's go play it and see how it is, and hopefully it builds off of the little hype that you have there, which is like, I think for me is good because I'm not going in there like extremely like, oh my god, over the top hyped, and then what they hyped is nothing that they provided and it just falls flat and you crash and burn. Like, sucks. Anyway, going on from there. So talking about that, the replayability. So the replayability from the main campaign, and once you finish the story and end game mode and all that nonsense, is once you get to that end game, like what's left there for replayability? Like what is there? Do we have, perfecting your build? Do we have, what other content besides that is being planned? Like what's the roadmap? Like what do we have? Is there other DLCs coming behind it? And then I noticed like thinking really far ahead. But I think we kind of have to with these type of games, because if you figure like any type of looter type game, they don't usually do too well. They come out, there's hype behind them, and then they fall short after endgame. Once people start getting to endgame, because there's really not much to do. Like there's all this like, after gear, and then after you get gear, it all just kind of falls short, and there's nothing left to get. There's nothing left to do because the content's already been drained, and you perfected your build that you really, really like, and you could play other classes, and that's cool if you're really enjoying other classes to play. But other than that, guys, like, what's the roadmap for this game? Where is this game going? Are they going to be adding open world? Are they going to be adding other realms? Are they going to be building on top of the realms? Are they going to be adding more levels to the endless dungeon, the Tower of Trials? Like, what is the roadmap? I would love to see Counterplay Games to drop some type of like roadmap and see where his game is actually going and what the plan is for it, for replayability long term for endgame. That's what my concern is about games like this, is that the end game it comes in hot, but then it fizzles just as fast as it came in. So hopefully it's cool, and hopefully it's good, and hopefully they have a plan. So moving on to, as we mentioned, this is a looter/slasher, and according to the developer, it's a brand new genre. I mean, it's an action ARPG built with looting. I think Kingdoms of Amalur did that. So it's nothing, I don't think anything too new in terms of action RPG with looter mechanisms. I mean, you don't see many looter slashes around like this third person, but you have Path of Exiles, you have, you're doing all this type of loot, and I know it's an ARPG, they're isometric, but you're going after loot and getting better loot to do better things and whatever have you. But either way, they're calling out a looter slasher, and basically you're going to collect tons of weapons. You're going to have weapons you can collect, items, amulets, charms, rings, and life stones. They're going to go from gray to gold, from your uncommon to your common to your rare to your epic and then to your legendary. And then you can have 120 weapons you can choose from. They're going to have unique main ability, which will be going to be unique to each weapon that you get. And then it will have a secondary one rolled from a pool of RNG. So start praying to your RNG god now. Once you get all that, you can really get nitty-gritty with your builds, and we'll talk about that later. They're also on top of what the developers are looking for. They're really trying to push this towards like player skill. They want this game to really be focused on that. Like they want the player skill to drive the game, not really focus on like, oh, let's get the best gear and attach the best meta equipment to it and smack everything in one shot. It's going to come down to making sure you're doing things right. And to go bring this back to Tower of Trials is very roguelike. So you're going to go into this Tower of Trials, and if you're thinking of going with this crazy ass build and just not dodge or block or do the mechanics correctly, you're going to get smashed and die and start from the beginning again. So it's really going to take a lot of making sure your positioning is correct and making sure you understand the mechanics, timing of certain things, using your shield correctly, making sure you're using all the different mechanics that are there correctly and collecting builds, using the breach system, using the soul shatter system, which we'll get into in a second, then tying all that in together to really get past these hard parts. What sounds like the combat is going to be difficult. So making sure that you're understanding the mechanics and play them and not getting yourself destroyed and starting from the back in the end game of Tower of Trial. So I know that seems cool to me, where it's not just going in and you're just equipping the best weapon and just pressing a button and the whole world dies because you're a god right now. So I think that's cool. The next thing we have is, this game is very focused on loot. Loot. And loot you're gonna get from bosses, from enemies, from chests and from the Towers of Trials. So it's gonna be very just focused on going after tons of freaking loot and getting the best loot you can, and then really taking it and making nitty-gritty builds. This game is supposedly like the tinkerer's dream. If you are someone who likes to tinker with builds and change the way certain things work and really get nitty-gritty with your certain builds, this game's for you then, because you can get really in-depth with that build. And change things how they play. You could change one thing and change the whole aspect of your play. You could be like a sword person who now does lightning damage, and all of a sudden you change one thing and now you're doing poison damage, and it works better. So I don't know, it looks pretty cool. The builds sound neat. I'm looking forward to that. This game's also very focused on offensive fighting, where you have action RPGs are more like, oh, okay, I gotta be defensive. I have to make sure I'm parrying and doing that. This game wants you in the fray, punching people in the face, slashing left and right, using your shield, getting into the middle of the combat and just destroying everything in your sight. So there's not going to be much time for defensive play. They really are looking to push that offensive fighting, and I'm really excited for that, because games like Dark Souls and things like that, it always made you kind of cautious and going in there and just getting right into the degree, because if you didn't play a little defensively, you got your ass kicked. Where this one's you need to play offensively, or then according to what I'm seeing from some of the combat videos, that the enemies will rush and get in the middle of you. So I don't know, offensive fighting is definitely the way they're pushing this. So very aggressive. And now talking about combat, and I'm really hoping combat's gonna be okay. And there's one thing we don't really know about right now, right? Is combat. I've seen some videos and I was like, this combat kind of looks, I don't know, sluggish and slow. But the more I've watched, the more I've been intrigued with it, because of different systems that look really, really neat and really fun to play with. So I'm really hoping that it gets in depth with that, and the combat gets to look like fun. I don't want to swing my Warhammer or my greatsword or anything else and swing it and hit like a wet noodle, because that would just suck. So hopefully the combat feels good. It's not sluggish, and when you're swinging a greatsword, it feels like you're swinging a greatsword. And just watching the videos, it does feel like that. You can just feel the slowness of the hammer coming down and just destroying enemies around you. So it looks cool. So that's pretty much the main campaign and the end game and the looter type slasher type game. So let's jump into some of these mechanics here. So the mechanics, we're going to start off with weak points, and weak points are pretty cool. This is triggered after enemy attacks and in between the recovery time. There's going to be a little red dot that shows up on them. You'll be able to kind of aim over to it and do bonus damage when you hit it. This will also tie into your loot, and this is where the mechanics get really interesting. So once you hit the weak point with whatever weapon you're using, your loot is going to tie into the system. And once you hit that, you're going to be able to get exploit the weak point and get more from your abilities. You'll be able to heal yourself, cause more damage, AO explosions, things like that when you hit those specific weak points. So you want to make sure you are hitting those, because it's definitely going to cause more vulnerability to your enemies, get some extra bonuses from your gear, and just kill things faster. So the next part of the mechanics is the breach system. The breach system, if you play Final Fantasy 13, it has the stagger system. As you beat up an enemy enough, you fill up a bar to put them to stagger, makes them vulnerable, and you can beat them up and do more damage. This is kind of like the same thing. So if you're gonna beat this enemy up, there's gonna be a bar that you fill up, and once you get this bar into the breach, it will put them into a stun or stagger mode, and it will make them very vulnerable to your attacks, which is very great. So now you can just burn down enemies really quick when you get to this mode. So I suggest finding ways to get the builds up quickly. There's gonna be different type of attacks you can have to do, playing off of different abilities, playing off different, swapping out your weapons, and just making sure you can build up those certain things. I'm pretty sure if it's like if I'm thinking like Final Fantasy 13, you know, using different attacks and different weapons and different type of people in that game, it filled up the stagger bar differently depending on how you attacked. So I'm thinking the same way, like different, you know, using dual blades against lighter enemies will fill up the breach system faster. Where if it's heavier enemies using like a sword or a great sword will fill up or AoE will just fill up the breach system faster. So it looks cool. This will also a breach system is affected by loot. So you can get healed off of the breach system once you activate breach. You can have AoE exploding buffs, many different things from the gear. So loot affects a lot. Next in our mechanics is the Soul Shatter system. This is cool. This sounds like a finisher. Well, it is a finisher. So you're going to deal damage again to build up another bar that is going to be affected. And once you build up this bar enough, you're going to allow you to do a heavy attack that will finish the enemy and causes them to explode. If you haven't noticed the little nature here of things, there's a lot of AoE happening around here. Just because if you actually look at the combat, there's a lot of different roles, a lot of different enemies are around you, so having that AoE damage just burst or cause, you know, extra damage is really nice. So this will also be affected by loot, which allow you to, you know, build up soul shadow faster. You get buffs from it, more damage, more AoE, healing. I don't know, there's a bunch of different things from different abilities from your gear from what I've been reading and seeing, which is pretty cool. I think my favorite system right now out of all the mechanics is the polarity system. This is really neat. So you can use two weapons in your loadout. So you can have like a sword and then a warhammer. You will have, it always has to be different though. You can't use the same weapons. You cannot use dual blades and dual blades. It has to be different from the first weapon you choose, which is cool, which is fine. So you'll be attacking with your first weapon, and as you're attacking with your first weapon, your second weapon that is, you know, holstered or sheathed away, will be building up charges. And the moment that this thing reaches its maximum potential of charges, you'll swap out to it. It will cause an explosion, like type of a shockwave, hit everyone, do AoE damage, and then once your weapon's out, or that second weapon is out, you will then have a buff on that weapon for a brief duration, and you'll beat everyone up with that buff. And then as you're doing that, the weapon you just put away will then start building up its charges again. So this really makes this really fun and interesting of the weapon swapping, adding different combos, strategically fighting, and keeping things interesting, knowing when to use it, when not to use it, how to hold off onto it. If you have a big wave coming, when's the best time to use it? So I think it really makes things a little more strategic in the fighting. And of course, it's affected by loot. If you haven't noticed, there's a theme here. AoE and loot. So it's very cool. I'm very excited for this. I like the fact that loot ties into everything. And with this loot, of course, you can have buffs, bigger explosions, healing. I don't know. Again, I'm not really sure. This is just some stuff I've read that can actually happen. So the mechanics are pretty dope. I'm really liking the systems here. There's a lot of systems here that kind of like puts a lot of stuff is going in. That kind of like keeps combat flowing and fresh. So it's not just getting, you know, pushing buttons and just moving on through. With some other ARPGs where you just push buttons and might have like one or two systems. This gives you a lot of different ways to defeat enemies and fight enemies and really keep the combat interesting and flowing, especially with the polarity system. So I'm looking forward to that one the most. So let's jump into Valor Plates. I keep talking about Valor Plates. Valor Plates are your classes, and you have three different types. You can have balanced Valor Plates, specialized Valor Plates, and exotic Valor Plates. Each of them will have like active traits. Certain will give you more damage, some will give you cooldown reduction, some will be really tanky, healy, poisony, whatever. There's gonna be 12 different types of Valor Plates. They're all Zodiac focused. And if you notice, the very first one that you're gonna start off with is a Silvermane. He's your basic starter one, and he looks like a lion, which I'm very excited about because I'm a Leo. But then there's gonna be other ones that are probably like, you know, Pisces, fishes, Tauruses, which are bull, Scorpio, which is a scorpion, you know, Cancer, which is a crab. So very, very, very cool. I'm looking forward to seeing all the different artwork behind that. And then, like, you know, Silvermane will give you CD reduction on its abilities, and then like Aegis support, which is like a tank type Valor Plate, will give you 5% damage reduction. It's more of like a support tank. And there's many more where that is, and it's very cool. The Valor Plates are kind of like war frames in a sense, so you can equip these different frames or plates that have different abilities that allow you to do different things, but then they have these active traits that allow you to give more towards your building and whatnot. Now we're going to jump into another system called the Archon Fury. This is cool as you're using your plates, you're going to go ahead and beat things up. And enemies will drop these things called orbs once you unlock the Archon Fury system. These orbs will fill up a bar, and once it's filled up, you can activate the Archon. The Archon is pretty much like an ultimate system. It's like an ultimate ability that will either summon enemies to help you, do tons of AoE damage, do a mass AoE heal. Like, it's ridiculously overpowered, and it's pretty dope. I don't know how many orbs it's going to take to fill up this Archon bar. Hopefully not too long, because I don't want to be like spamming Archon, so hopefully it's going to take a little bit to fill up. Hopefully there's a nice balance to it. But this sounds really ridiculously powerful, where you can summon like 3 different enemies to come fight you. I think this is actually the Aegis one. Will come 3 different enemies to come fight with you. It will do mass AoE damage and then heal you at the same time. Like, it's like, what? It's a little ridiculous. Sorry, I hit my mic. Like, that's just nuts. So that's very cool. I'm looking forward to see that in action as we get into near the, as we start unlocking that. The next part of this, the Valor Plates, is the augment system. This is kind of like where it comes down to customization of your build, and it's where people and tinkers are really going to have a lot of fun with this. So right now we have 3. Well, I think we're going to have 3 forever. We're going to have might, we have damage, we have spirit. So might is your damage, vitality is your health, and spirit is your cooldown reduction and your specialty damage. That's cool. So you can collect all these augments, and as you collect these augments, you'll be able to equip them to your Valor Plate. The Valor Plate has kind of like a constellation with 10 nodes, red, green, and blue, which is, might, vitality, and spirit, respectively. Kind of reminds me of Path of Exiles a little bit. But then all your Valor Plates will have different layouts. Like tank plates will have more vitality. If you're a Healy type plate, you'll have more spirit, things like that. If you're a DPS plate, you have more damage plates, damage augments. There's also going to be blank white nodes on each of the augments that you can equip any colored augment to kind of actually really critique and build the build you want. The also thing about this, if you remember Warframe, you can have a certain amount of like abilities equipped. Once you reach the amount of abilities, you kind of cap out. The same thing with the Valor Plates. They have a power usage system, and once you've reached that maximum amount of power usage, you can't equip any more augments. This will increase as you level up and unlock the game more. I think I've seen like a maximum of 100, maybe more than that, but right now I've seen a maximum of 100 that you can have equipped power usage, and I think each augment costs more power than the other. So it's planning and correlating and really tinkering with your build and seeing what works and what fits. So I'm really liking that. On top of this, with the Valor Plates, there's going to be 5 weapon types. You're going to have the long sword, which is balanced. They're also going to have the polearm, which is very precise striking. The great sword, which is going to be a mix of the long sword and the warhammer, and right into the warhammer. The warhammer is like your slow, heavy hitting, which would be great for a CC. So the great sword will kind of get like the balanced attack of the long sword and the slight CC of the warhammer, which is cool. And then you have dual blades, which of course is going to be your fastest like weapon. So if you're looking for like a rogue type gameplay, I'll probably grab the dual blades as your main weapon. They all have different types of styles and unique abilities and unique flashy attacks, which is neat. What I also like about the weapons is that you can actually get weapon arts, and each weapon is going to have, as we mentioned before, is going to have its own main abilities, and you'll be able to trigger those off and use those to do actually more attacks and really kick some booty butt with your abilities. So you can use. The cool thing too, also with the system, you can use one weapon throughout the whole game because of how the weapon system upgrades work. So if you found like a purple weapon that you really like, you can upgrade it and upgrade it and make it your weapon and make it good. So I'm liking that. It's not like crazy to go farming. So if you found the build that you like with a specific weapon, you're done. Also, I've noticed is everyone gets a shield, and I love the shield because I feel like Captain America, who's a Viking, it's badass. So you can have this shield. You'll be able to throw at people. You'll be able to block with people, do wave attacks. You'll be able to throw your shield, catch it, and time it correctly and do a wave attack. You'll be able to like do a block and then teleport to the enemy and then kill the enemy after you teleport to him or do some massive damage. There's also a shield finisher. You can pull into the finisher system, which is very neat. The shield is a main core part of the game. It's not some secondary nonsense. You're going to be using your shield as much as you're going to be using your 2 weapons. So really make sure you really have learned how to use a shield, because it's really going to come down to your combat. You're going to need that. So, I mean, those are all the systems that I found and were able to see through. I'll kind of ramble through those, but I'm really excited for this game. The combat sounds awesome. I'm really hoping the combat is not sluggish and crummy and blah. I'm really hoping it's going to feel good, and I'm not swinging a huge warhammer, and when I hit, it feels like a wet noodle, or the combat's sluggish and slow. It looks pretty fast paced. It reminds me of Warframe in a lot of ways, but it just it just looks fun. It looks a lot cooler than Warframe. I like Warframe, but I don't know. This game's gonna do it for me. Maybe because it's more high fantasy than it is space. I always get drawn to fantasy over space games. So, but here's some things I want to hope for, and I hope for in this game. I want lots of replayability. I want to be able to not just farm for gear. I would love to see a roadmap after this game launches after a few weeks, just see where the game is going. What DLCs might be coming? What will be adding to the realms? There's going to be more bosses. There's going to be different types of challenges we can do that will be popping up different realms. Like that'd be cool if there was like public challenges that pop up in realms, or challenges for you to pop in realms for your friends to pop in and go hang out and beat these crazy ass challenges that have a chance of dropping some like legendary loot. So I would just love to see where this is going besides just farming gear all day, because eventually that's gonna get old really quick. So I'm hoping that they have some replayability besides just the loot system, and really push for extra content. On top of that, I would like to see a variety of builds and no cookie cutter nonsense. This would be okay if it was. It should be okay since it's not PvP focused. You know, if it was a PvP focused game, you're always gonna have the cookie cutter. Well, this is the best build you need to use because you're this class and blah blah. Because it's a PvE game, the meta and the cookie cutter nonsense should not really matter. You know, people are going to say it's the best build, but you find one thing that tweaks slightly differently, and now you're doing 4 times more damage than what one person said doing. So builds in this game, I think, become like a framework of certain builds, and it can be tweaked and turned and tinkered a certain way and towards your type of, you know, your feel of gameplay. So I don't think there's really going to be any cookie cutter. I hope there isn't, at least. And then I hope this doesn't become a loot box focused game where you're going to be paying money for skins, because the game looks really cool and the skins look really, really, really neat. But I hope it does not become something where you're going to be sitting there and where you can just drop money and get cool skins, because that would kind of annoy me. I understand. I have no problem supporting a developer, but hopefully kind of do it the way Digital Extremes does it with Warframe, whereas like if you want this skin, you can go grind the hell out of it. Or you can go ahead and buy it with platinum. So hopefully I do something like that. But I would love to see skins and more customization. Because you know, I think like right now the biggest customization of Valor Plates, I don't think I covered that. Biggest customization for Valor Plates is like a coloring scheme. There's not much. You can't change helmets or the way gear looks. You can change the way your color looks, and that's really about it. So you can have like 2 pink silver mains, and cool. But anyway, guys, I think this video went a little bit longer than I wanted to. And I wanted to cover just some of this. So I appreciate you hanging out and watching the video. If you're still all the way through, I appreciate you just hanging out and checking out the video. Remember, if you enjoyed all this, make sure you hit that sub button. We're going to be covering Godfall a lot. I'm going to be playing it on release, streaming. I'm over on twitch.tv/RivenBrodragon. The link is down in the description. Leave me your comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts of what you think of Godfall. Did you pick it up? And what are you looking for most in this game? I would love to hear what you have to say about this. Guys, I appreciate you so much for hanging out. I will check you all out next time. Peace out, everyone.